Welcome to Year 6's whole class reading for Thursday the 7th of January. Today we're going to continue to get to know our new core text, Stella by Starlight. We're going to revisit Chapter 3, which we looked at in English yesterday. Afterwards we'll go through an example of evaluating the author's language choices together, and then we'd like you to pick at least 3 of your own examples from the chapter. The sentence stems provided will help to support your writing. Let's start with rereading Chapter 3. Be on the lookout for any interesting language choices as we read. Chapter 3. Feeling uneven. While the men talked in heated whispers in the kitchen, Stella and Dr. Hawkins's son, Anthony, sat outside on the front steps. Jojo, very much against his will, had been sent to sleep in his parents' bed in the upstairs loft. Anthony had come with his father, but the children had been told to make themselves scarce, which pretty much was what Stella was usually told when grown-ups started talking grown-up stuff. Most times, that made no never mind to her. Their talk was usually pretty dull listening. But this time, she was irked. This had to do with all of them. Well, at least Anthony was there. Even though she and Tony were both in the 5th grade and had walked to school together since 1st grade, Stella felt a little self-conscious in the dark with the boy. She touched her hair. She knew it was a mess, and she wasn't quite sure why that bothered her so much. Plus, it was cold. She'd at least thought to grab a blanket off her bed before she left the house, and now she pulled it and the dog closer. "You ever been outside at 3 a.m. before?" Stella asked Tony, finally, who looked warm in a woolen jacket. "Lots of times. I usually go with my father when he has an emergency," he replied. "I like the night." "Me too," Stella said. She looked up at the sky. Dusky clouds shifted above, shielding, then revealing, then shielding the stars again. "Me and Jojo saw the clan tonight, burning a cross," she added quietly. "Yeah, my father told me." He paused, then asked, "Were you scared?" "My guts felt frozen," Stella admitted. Tony went silent as the night. The insects and tree frogs, Stella figured, had tucked themselves into some muddy place, just trying to keep warm. No nighttime animals called to one another, at least none that she could hear. Even Dusty was quiet, folded at her feet, but he sniffed the air, watchful and alert. "You want to know a secret?" Tony asked out of the blue. "Sure," Stella said, shrugging, still trying to feel as if sitting outside with a boy at 3 a.m. was a perfectly normal thing to be doing. "Sometimes, at night, I go and run at the track of the white school." As Stella gaped, he hurried on. "It's honest to goodness cinder, you know. It's so much better than running on our lumpy dirt road. On that white school track, I feel like an eagle or something." Stella didn't doubt it. Tony was one heck of a runner. None of the boys in school, not even those taking high school classes, could beat him in a foot race. Still, the white school track. Stella drew her breath. "You're going to get in big trouble if they find out." "I'm too fast. Who's going to catch me?" Tony said, leaping up and bouncing from step to step. "My legs feel the burn of the run before my body even knows I'm moving." In spite of everything, Stella laughed out loud. Tony stopped jumping and got serious. "I want to be like the Midnight Express." "What's that? A train?" "Don't you know the Midnight Express? It's Eddie Tolan. He won 2 gold medals in track at the Olympics this summer. World records, girl! In the 100-meter and 200-meter events. They even gave him the title World's Fastest Human." Tony bent his elbows into a running stance. "Tolan was the only coloured boy to get golds in track." "I had no idea they let coloured people be in the Olympics." "I guess so. I read about it in the Carolina Times back in August." Tony began bouncing from step to step again. "I'm going to run in the Olympics one day," he declared. "But We don't even have a track team at our school. Never mind a place to practice. Yeah, but the white school does. That's why I use their track at night. You think if you went to that school they'd let you run on their team? Stella asked. Tony's step jumping slowed down. Probably not. After a moment, Stella said quietly, "You're not the only one with a secret." Yeah? Stella looked back at the door to make sure it was still closed. Sometimes I sneak outside real late at night too. To write. To write? But why? We get enough of that in school. Stella thought about that for a moment. Well, I don't like writing much, and I'm not very good at it, so I practice when nobody is around. He must think I'm really goofy, she thought, but Tony was quiet as she tried to explain. But I do like being outside in the darkness. At least, I did before tonight. Seems like stuff that's hard for me at school is easier at night. Does that make sense? Yeah, I get it. Tony glanced at the door and then lowered his voice. You're going to write about the Klan? Stella's eyes widened. I couldn't. What if? What if what? She hesitated. I know this sounds crazy, but what if somehow one of them finds out about what I saw? And that's not all. What's not all? Stella's heart began to thud. Please don't tell anybody, but I think I know who one of them is. Tony sat back down and blinked. That kind of information can get you hurt, girl. I know. That's why I'm not writing about it, she paused. Besides, I don't think I could put into words the shiver down my back or the tingle in my toes or the thunder in my heartbeat while we watched. You just did, Tony told her matter-of-factly. Stella shook her head. Why do you think they were out there tonight? They haven't done anything like this around here for a long time, Papa says. Tony stared out into the dark. All I know is, every time they get to showing off their pointy bed sheets, something bad happens. I got a feeling they like making us feel uneven. How do you mean? Well, it's sort of like we're living on a boat that might sink. Tony nodded. With no oars and holes in the boat. I think when we get scared, they feel strong, Stella reasoned. But why? What's the point? Tony tilted his head towards the house. What do you think the old folks are talking about? They've got to be worried, Stella said. Real worried. But not one of them ever does anything. She stomped her foot on the rough wooden step. But Stella, what can they do? They got no power, no money. Like my daddy says, it's hard to live like there's a boot on your back every second of your life. He reached down for a handful of pebbles and flung them into the night. A clatter immediately followed. He had a good arm, as well as being fast. Those pebbles had reached the front fence. Yeah, but your daddy got out, Stella ventured. He went to college, and now he's a doctor. Because he was the only Negro doctor for 200 miles, Tony's father delivered babies, gave tonics and cough medicines for head colds, and patched up scratches, cuts and burns. He stayed busy 7 days a week. Yeah, he did. But he told me more than enough stories about how bad he was treated while he was getting his training. They made him empty the bedpans and clean up the blood on the floor after surgery. None of the other interns had to do that. They gave him broken equipment and outdated books, and only let him treat coloured folk. Stella tucked her toes under the edge of the blanket. My papa always tells me we got to be twice as smart to get half as much, she told Tony with a frown. Tony's voice grew tight. And even after all this time, my daddy's still not allowed to treat white patients. Like their diseases are high class or something. He whipped more stones across after the first ones, and Dr. Packard, the white doctor, he won't even lay a hand on a black patient, even if they're dying, he added. Oh, he'll lay a hand when he wants to, Stella's voice went harsh. How do you mean? Tony asked, wiping his hands on his pants. When I was 5, Dr. Packard, well, he slapped me. Hard. Right across the face. I can still remember it hurt so badly. You did? But why? Remember that game? Step on a crack, break your mother's back. Yeah, you jump over the cracks on the sidewalk. Well, I was with Mama and we were walking down Main Street heading to Mrs. Cooper's candy store. I was so happy. I was concentrating on the sidewalk, doing my jumps, and I didn't see Dr. Packard. I accidentally stepped on his shoe and got some mud on it. Tony sucked in his breath. You didn't? Yep, I did. I apologized over and over, and so did my mother. She even bent down to wipe off the mud with her handkerchief. But he pushed my mum away. She almost fell. And then he reached down and whomped me as hard as he could. I remember his green eyes as he sneered at me. Then he called me stupid and careless and some other stuff I'm not going to repeat, and he walked away. Tony exhaled hard, angry. Gosh, Stella, so what did you do? I started crying. Worse than that, Mama cried. And then there was nothing that either of us could do except go home. I never did get any candy. Now she grabbed up some pebbles and flung them across the yard. No clatter. But the voices inside were getting louder, so maybe she just didn't hear it. Dusty raised his head and growled softly. Settle down now. Settle down, Stella whispered, stroking the dog's back. Everything's going to be okay, boy. But she wasn't sure about that at all. Chapter 4. Nailing jelly to a tree. The meeting was breaking up as Stella decided she and Tony were about to surely freeze to death. She opened the front door hesitantly to the smell of tobacco and sweat and strong coffee. The neighbour men, a good 20 of them, were saying goodbye, clapping one another on the back, making their way out. Roosters had begun crowing up and down the road, and no adult would be going back to sleep that morning. Stella said bye to Tony and grabbed the broom without being told. Sweeping stray ashes from the hearth, beating at the stones, she was so rough that shards of corn husk broke from the broom's bottom. Her mother took the broom from Stella's hand. So now we've read chapter 3, let's have a little look at a part of the text. We've identified one section here where Tony and Stella are talking together. Tony stared out into the dark. All I know is, every time they get to showing off their pointy bed sheets, something bad happens. I got a feeling they like making us feel uneven. How do you mean? Well, it's sort of like we're living on a boat that might sink. Now, when I read this section, I think of the following things. The way the author uses the phrase pointy bed sheets makes me imagine the characters being dressed up like ghosts on Halloween. It makes me wonder why they wear a costume. Is it because the KKK are frightened of being identified? Using another sentence stem, I thought of a second sentence we could also create. I like the way the author uses the phrase, it's sort of like we're living on a boat that might sink, because it helps to emphasize how much danger Stella and Tony think they are actually in. So what we'd like you to do now is go back through the video, identify a piece of writing that you think the author has used, and then evaluate why you think they've used that language. What effect are they trying to create with you, the reader? There are some questions on the slide as well that says, can you think of different stems to write your evaluations in different ways? Which of the evaluations you have written do you think is the most effective and why? And what makes a good evaluation? I look forward to seeing some of your replies.